Just before we get into what the Prime Minister had to say yesterday, we've learnt today two bits of information. Boris Johnson is a member of his family. He's got COVID. He's not able to go on a trip to Lancashire today, but also that Jonathan Van Tam, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, is leaving his role. Your reaction to both of those stories?
Well, I wish Boris Johnson's family member well. I think having COVID in the family is a bit of a nightmare, to be honest, and we've been through it ourselves. So I certainly wouldn't want to say anything other than I hope that whoever it is recovers very quickly. And in relation to Jonathan Van Tam, I think one of the most striking things during the course of this pandemic is the way that a number of scientific experts have been able to come to the fore and communicate to the public in very clear terms about what is happening with the virus, being honest about what they know and honest about what they don't know and what they need from the public, and to do so without influence from politicians. He's never seen his job as to defend politicians' decisions. He sees his job as to provide as clear advice as possible, and I very much thank him for that. He's done the country a real service.
OK, well, let's talk about the Prime Minister yesterday. Keir Starmer went on the attack, demanded his apology. We've even had three Tory MPs, including the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, calling for the Prime Minister to go after his, non-apology apology at Prime Minister's questions. What did you make of what he had to say to the MPs yesterday?
Well, I listened very carefully to what the Prime Minister had to say, and it was pretty clear that he was sorry, not for having broken the rules that he made and that he asked the rest of us to abide by, but that he got caught. He seems to have virtually no understanding of the level of hurt and anger that it's caused across the country. In some parts of the country, like here in Wigan, where I'm talking to you from now, we were in almost continuous lockdown for nearly a year, and people were not seeing family in care homes. They were not spending time together. They weren't able to hold their first grandchild. And now my inbox is absolutely full of people saying, I'm not even sure now that I did the right thing, because if he was partying in Downing Street, why didn't I go and say goodbye to a dying relative? It's absolutely heartbreaking and incredible that the Prime Minister of this country has put people in that position.
Well, first of all, we were told by the Prime Minister that he was unaware of any events taking place, but was sure that, this referred to other parties as well, he was sure that no rules had been broken. He'd been assured by everybody. And then he didn't know whether he had been at this party or not, and couldn't say anything because Sue Gray, civil servant to Permanent Secretary, was investigating. We had to wait to find out from her whether he had been at the party or not. Then, of course, after derision of that, he admitted that he'd been at this event. He says he was only there for 25 minutes. He hadn't seen an email saying it was a bring your own booze event. He turned up. Apparently, we're told there's photographic evidence and videos of there being trestle tables full of booze and food. Some 30 to 40 people of the 100 who were invited to this bash at 6 o'clock on a sunny May evening in 2020. But he says he didn't realise, he implicitly believed that this was a work event. Is that even remotely believable?
I just think he must think that the entire British public are complete and utter fools if he thinks that turning up to what was clearly a party, a drinks party in his own garden, didn't constitute a major breach of the rules. It clearly wasn't a work event. It was a social event. That was clear from the email that was sent.
Well, even if it was a work event, such a work event, even if there'd been no booze, would also have been against the law at the time.
Well, and not only that, but the same day that he was partying in the Downing Street garden, his own culture secretary was out telling the nation that if they met in groups outside, they would face fines and possibly criminal sanctions. His home secretary was telling people to call the police if they saw their neighbours having parties in their own gardens. And he himself, the Prime Minister, stood up in the House of Commons that day and confirmed that 181 National Health Service staff had lost their lives because of the pandemic, underlining how serious it was. It just simply doesn't wash. It's not credible that the Prime Minister happened to wander into his own garden, see people drinking alcohol and with, as you say, potentially trestle tables full of food, and think that he was just at a work gathering and not doing anything wrong.
Well, I mean, calls for him to resign are all very well, but at the end of the day, he was getting enough support from his cabinet yesterday. It took quite a long time. I think it was 8 hours before Rishi Sunak Sunak tweeted some rather lukewarm support as his Chancellor. We're going to all wait now for this Sue Gray investigation. Who knows? A Metropolitan Police investigation. And then a lot of people are saying everything really hinges not on that so much as the 5th of May local elections. Your party, Labour Party, currently 10 points ahead in the polls. We could see if Tory voters sit on their hands and don't turn out to vote a big victory for Labour then. But do you think that this has got enough legs, this story, that it's going to carry on and that it will be the end for the Prime Minister? Or do you think a lot of people will say, well, you know what, they may be unhappy. They may think he lied to them. They may think that actually a lot of what we had to go through for the last 2 years was unreasonable, given that number 10 Downing Street staff and Prime Minister weren't obeying the rules. But they'd still rather have Boris Johnson in charge than either any other Tory or Keir Starmer and his team, including you.
Well, look, it's not for me to tell the public what they think. People are going to have to make their own minds up about whether they think the Prime Minister's actions are acceptable or not. And the fact that he's still not levelling with people, he won't come clean about the full extent of this, and that he's hiding behind an inquiry when he could, Julia, come on your show this morning and tell the nation what has been going on, what on earth has been going on in Downing Street for the last 2 years while we've all been confined to our homes, not meeting members of our family, not being able to go out and live our lives. And the Prime Minister appears to have been at an endless round of parties. It's up to people to decide what they make of that. And it's our job as the official opposition to make sure that as much of that information is in the public domain as possible. That's why Angela Rayner, our deputy leader, has written to the government this morning demanding details about the many parties that cabinet ministers are refusing to answer questions about, because the rot starts from the top with this government. But like you said, they've all come out to defend him, to defend the indefensible and to side with him against people in this country who are doing the right thing. The rot runs right the way through this government, and people deserve to know the full extent of this so that when eventually they're given the chance to go to the ballot box, I hope that if those Tory MPs have not found the backbone to get rid of him, then the public will have the final say.